If your fridge died tonight, most modern kitchens would lose half their food by the weekend. Not because the food is bad, but because we've built our entire pantry around plastic and cold air. Ancient monasteries didn't have either, yet they kept staples stable for weeks, months, sometimes longer, by following a simple blueprint that still works in a normal home. Do this first right now. Open your flour, rice, or oats container and press a dry paper towel against the inside of the lid for a few seconds. If it comes away even slightly damp, or it smells sweet and stale, you don't have a food problem. You have a moisture problem. Fix it in 1 minute. Move that container up to the highest shelf you have. Keep it away from the stove. Keep it away from any outside wall. Leave it open for 10 minutes so trapped humidity can escape. Then reseal it. That one move stops the silent spoilage most people blame on old groceries. Now here's the map. You're going to learn 4 levers monks used across different climates. First, dry foods before storage, so microbes don't get water. Second, store staples in the coldest corner of your home, without turning your whole place into a fridge. Third, use acidity and fermentation to keep vegetables stable without plastic tubs. And fourth, seal certain foods with salt, fat, or oil so air and moisture can't ruin them. We'll start in Tibetan Buddhist monasteries because they build an entire pantry around one grain that stays stable when it's kept properly dry. Then we'll move to European monasteries, where the secret is a cool zone and strict rotation. Then Japanese temples, where controlled acidity does the job people now outsource to refrigerators. And finally, desert monasteries, where sun and airflow turn food into something that simply can't rot because there's no water left for microbes to use. By the end, you'll have a monastery pantry blueprint you can copy without buying gadgets or filling your kitchen with plastic. Before you change what you buy, check where you're storing it. Put your hand on the lowest shelf in your cabinet. Then put your hand on the highest shelf. If the lower shelf feels cooler or slightly clammy, that's where moisture lives, even in a home that feels dry. Monasteries learned this the hard way. A damp base shelf doesn't just ruin one bag of grain. It ruins the whole winter. So their system starts with a rule that sounds almost too simple. Storage begins with dryness, not with containers. In Tibetan regions, roasted barley flour, often known as tsampa, became a staple partly because roasting drives off moisture and creates a shelf-stable base. It can be stored and carried, then eaten on demand by mixing it with liquid and fat. The lesson isn't eat tsampa. The lesson is build your pantry around dry bases that don't spoil quickly. Then combine them at the moment of eating, not at the moment of storage. Now do a second check tonight. The glass fog check. Pour a cup of rice or oats into a clear jar. Seal it. Leave it exactly where you normally store grains. Tomorrow morning, look at the inside of the glass. If you see fogging, tiny droplets, or clumping, that corner is your enemy. Move the jar higher. Move it away from an outside wall. You just found your problem zone in under a day. Here's the most common mistake monasteries avoid by habit and modern kitchens do constantly. People seal food while it's still warm. Warm food releases moisture. Moisture gets trapped. A week later, you think your pantry just goes bad. So use the rule monks live by. Cool uncovered first, then seal. If something was near steam, vent it. Don't trap it. Now build a dry shelf. Pick one top shelf. That shelf is for dry staples only. Grains, legumes, salt, dried herbs. Nothing that steams. Nothing that sweats. Nothing that leaks. This is your protected zone. And if you want a simple upgrade without buying new containers, use a 2-layer storage habit. Inside layer, something that doesn't trap microhumidity right against the food. Paper, cloth, something breathable. Outside layer, a jar or tin to block pests and outside moisture swings. Plastic isn't the hero here. It's just a wall. If you trap humidity behind the wall, you still lose. Monks win because they prevent humidity from entering the system in the first place. Now do one more fast check. The lid smell test. Open your flour or oats and smell the lid, not the food. If the lid smells sweet stale or faintly sour, that's trapped humidity and early spoilage, even if the food still looks fine. Vent it for 10 minutes. Move it higher. Keep it off the cold wall. And now you can see why this system lasts. A monk pantry stores ingredients that resist time. Then it turns them into meals fast. A modern pantry stores ready-to-eat moist foods. Soft breads, open snacks, Packages that inhale humidity every time you open the cabinet. So here's the modern copy in one sentence. Make one shelf a dry base shelf. And make one rule: nothing warm gets sealed. That's lever one. But even a perfectly dry pantry can feel fragile if your home runs warm, because warm speeds everything up. So next, we're switching levers. In Europe, monasteries use cold, darkness, and rotation. And the first step is simple. In about 20 seconds, you'll find the coldest cellar corner in your home and turn it into a natural refrigerator. First, find your cellar corner in 20 seconds. Walk through your home and touch 3 spots with the back of your hand for 2 seconds each. Touch the inside wall of a north-facing exterior corner. Touch the floor-level corner of a pantry or closet. Touch the inside of a cabinet that sits near your kitchen appliances. The coldest, most stable feeling spot is your natural refrigerator. European monasteries didn't beat spoilage with magic. They beat it with a cool, dark zone and strict rules about what goes there and what never should. Set up the cool zone today with one simple move. Keep it dark, keep it steady, and keep it breathable. Now move only 3 categories there first. Whole potatoes, onions, and garlic. Unopened jars and bottles. Don't start with everything. Start with the things that benefit most from stable, cool air. And keep root vegetables out of sealed plastic. Plastic traps moisture. Moisture turns one good onion into a whole bag of rot. If you need a container, use something breathable. A paper bag, a basket, a sack, anything that lets air move. Now do a quick proof overnight. Put a cheap thermometer in that cool corner. Put another on your kitchen counter. Check both in the morning. You don't need perfect numbers. You're looking for stability. A good cool zone barely swings. A bad one warms up when the sun hits the wall or when the stove runs, then cools fast again. That swing is what makes food age quickly. Now here's another mistake modern homes make in one sentence. They store the wrong foods together. Some fruits release a ripening gas that speeds up spoilage in nearby vegetables. So if you keep apples next to potatoes or onions, you're quietly shortening the life of everything. So use this simple rule. Keep fruit out of the cool zone, or at least keep apples away from potatoes and onions. Now let's add the second part of a European system. Salt. Not as a hobby, as a way to buy time and prevent the fastest failure mode in modern kitchens. The fastest failure mode is warm, wet food sealed in a container. It creates condensation. Condensation creates odor, then slime, then waste. So here's the practical copy. If you cooked meat or cooked vegetables and you need them to last longer, don't store them wet and warm. Pat the surface dry. Salt lightly. Let cool uncovered for 10 minutes. Then store it. This isn't preserving for months. It's stopping the one thing that makes leftovers turn bad fast: trapped moisture. Now do a quick check in your own kitchen. Look in your pantry and find anything stored above the kettle, above the dishwasher, or above the stove. Those spots get daily heat and steam. They're humidity traps. That's where flour goes stale. That's where sugar clumps. That's where grains pick up moisture. Move those items tonight, and your pantry becomes more stable within a week. Now, the third part of the European system is what makes it feel unfair. Rotation. Most homes don't run out of food. They lose it in the back of the shelf. Monasteries didn't allow that. They removed decision-making with one rule. One incoming, one outgoing. Every time you bring a new bag of rice, beans, oats, or flour into the house, pull the oldest one forward immediately. Put it in the use next position. If you don't do this, your pantry becomes a graveyard of forgotten packages, and you end up shopping again while food dies quietly behind the front row. Now put the system together. You already built Zone A in the Tibetan section. Zone A is the dry base shelf, high and protected for grains, legumes, salt, and dry staples. Now build Zone B. Zone B is your cool corner, dark and stable, for root vegetables and sealed jars. 2 zones. 1 habit. Nothing warm gets sealed. Nothing damp gets stored. And if you do just that, your kitchen stops relying on plastic as your main defense, because the environment becomes the defense. Next, we switch levers again. In Japanese temple kitchens, food stays stable not because it's cold, but because the environment becomes hostile to spoilage. And before we touch any method, you'll learn one safety line that tells you what you can do at home and what you should never gamble with. Before you try any ancient method, draw one safety line. Ask this one question: is the food high risk? Meat, fish, dairy, cooked rice sitting warm. Anything protein-rich and moist. If yes, you don't gamble with casual fermentation. You refrigerate it, you freeze it, or you eat it fast. The Japanese temple advantage works best where it actually belongs. Mostly vegetables, some grains in paste form, and controlled pickles. Now here's the first thing you can copy tonight, without starting a fermentation project. If you cook vegetables and you want them to last longer, don't store them wet and neutral. Salt them lightly. Add a small splash of vinegar, lemon, or something sour if the dish allows. Let them cool uncovered for a few minutes. Then seal. That doesn't make food immortal. It just makes the container smell cleaner tomorrow, and it slows the fastest kind of spoilage. Because the lever here is simple. Acid changes the environment. When the environment shifts, the wrong microbes struggle. Now, in Japanese temple kitchens, preservation wasn't one trick. It was a toolbox. Pickling, salting, fermented bases. Historically, temple cooking leaned heavily on plant foods and on preserved staples like miso and pickled vegetables, because those methods made food reliable long before modern refrigeration. But for a normal home, keep it simple and controlled. If you want the safest version of temple preservation, start with vinegar pickles. The control is clearer, the timeline is shorter, and it's easier to keep clean. Here's a simple rule to keep you grounded. If a pickle turns slimy, smells rotten, or grows visible mold, it's done. You don't scrape it. You don't rebalance it. You throw it out. Now here's the most common mistake people make when they try to copy fermentation. They seal warm food in a jar. Warm plus wet plus sealed is not tradition. It's a condensation machine. So use the temple discipline. Cool, uncovered first. Then salt or acidify. Then store. That's the habit you can steal even if you never make a single pickle. Now let's talk about the base food idea, because this is where Japanese temples feel like they had a refrigerator even when they didn't. They didn't store 10 fragile ingredients. They stored a few stable bases that could turn into meals fast. Miso is the perfect example. It's a fermented, salted paste that stays useful for a long time, and it turns plain food into something satisfying quickly. The lesson isn't make miso. The lesson is keep a few shelf-stable flavor bases so you don't rely on fragile food every day. In a practical home, that can be simple. Salt, vinegar, a fermented paste like miso, dried mushrooms, dried seaweed, things that don't rot quickly, but make basic meals taste real. Now here's a rule that prevents a lot of waste and doesn't cost a cent. Stop washing vegetables before storage. Moisture is the enemy. If produce comes damp, dry it before storing. Store it in something breathable, not sealed plastic where condensation forms. Then wash it right before you cook it. That one habit alone keeps vegetables firmer and cleaner for longer. So here's what you have now. Zone A, dry base shelf. Zone B, cool corner. And this section gives you a third lever for foods that don't fit either zone. Controlled salt and controlled acidity. But there's one more climate where the rules become brutally obvious. What happens when you don't have cold at all? Desert monasteries prove the extreme case. They keep food stable by removing the one thing spoilage always needs: water. Next, you'll set up a simple drying station in your home, and you'll get the hard discard rules. The exact moment you stop trying to save food and you throw it out. Do this first, because it changes how you see almost every spoiled item in your kitchen. Pick one thing that goes bad too fast. Fresh herbs, mushrooms, sliced fruit, cooked vegetables, bread. Now ask one question. Is it spoiling because it's old or because it's staying wet? In hot, dry climates, monks and hermit communities learn a blunt truth. If you remove enough water, most food stop being food for microbes. That doesn't make everything safe forever, but it does make drying one of the most powerful non-electropreservation levers humans ever used. And this section is where the rule becomes simple. Dry first, then seal. So keeps pests out, but also keeps humidity in. So if something is even slightly damp and you seal it, you're storing a future problem. Now here's the first thing you can copy today without buying gadget. Make a drying station. Not a machine, a station. Pick one spot with airflow. Near a window you can crack open. Near a range hood you can run for a few minutes. Or any place in your home where air naturally moves. Lay down a clean mesh surface or a simple rack. Then use it for small amounts, short times. Not as a hobby, as a kitchen habit. Dry herbs before they go in jars. Dry mushrooms before you store them. Dry fruit slices if you want them to last. Because a dry food doesn't rot the same way a wet food does. But here's the safety line, because this is where people get hurt. Drying does not rescue spoiled food. It preserves clean food. So use one hard rule. If it smells off before drying, it goes in the trash. No exceptions. Now let's talk about oil, because this is another desert world trick people misunderstand. Oil can create a barrier. It reduces oxygen exposure and slows surface drying. But oil does not sterilize. So don't take a romantic idea and turn it into a risky habit. Here's the safe way to copy the principle. Use oil as a short-term freshness barrier for cooked, low-risk foods, and keep it cold when you can. For example, cooked vegetables can be topped with a thin layer of oil in a container to slow oxidation, then kept in the fridge and eaten soon. That's not shelf-stable preservation. That's extending freshness without plastic wrap. And here's what you never do. You don't seal raw garlic, raw herbs, or random moist foods in oil on your counter for days. That's how people create a problem they didn't need. Now do a simple proof in 10 seconds. Take a glass jar and drop in a tablespoon of a dry staple. Rice, lentils, beans. Seal it and shake it hard for 5 seconds. Look at the glass. If you see dust sticking to the sides or clumps forming, that staple is picking up moisture in your storage environment. So move it higher. Move it away from the outer wall. Move it away from steam sources. You're not guessing anymore. You're reading your kitchen like a weather system. Now let's fix one modern waste cycle that desert logic makes obvious. Bread. Soft bread molds because it holds moisture. Traditional communities relied on breads and staples that were baked or dried to last, not soft loaves sealed in warm plastic. So here's the practical version. If you buy bread, don't trap it in plastic in a warm kitchen. Freeze it, or keep it breathable in a cool zone. Then toast slices as you need them. Toasting is a miniature drying method. It takes a fragile food and makes it stable for hours. Now here's the mistake that ruins dried foods more than anything else. Storing them before they're fully dry. People dry herbs for a day, feel they're dry enough, jar them, and 2 weeks later the jar smells like a swamp. So use the simple rule. If it bends, it's not dry. If it feels cool and leathery, it's not dry. It should feel brittle. Then, and only then, it gets stored. And one more upgrade, that makes a big difference. Don't store dried food in one big batch that gets opened again and again. Store it in smaller portions, because every opening pulls in humidity and re-wets the supply. Small portions stay stable. Now we end with the part that builds trust. The discard rules. Because nothing is worth saving if it makes you sick. Here are the hard lines. If it smells rotten, it's out. If it smells sour in a way it shouldn't, it's out. If it has visible mold on soft, moist food, it's out. If a sealed jar shows condensation inside the glass, treat it as wet food again. Dry it properly and use it soon, or throw it away. If anything builds pressure or bubbles where it shouldn't, it's out. And if you're unsure, you don't test it with a bite. You throw it away. Now, put the entire video into one blueprint you can actually follow. Build 2 zones and 1 habit. Zone A is your dry base shelf, high and protected for grains, legumes, salt, and stable staples. Zone B is your cool corner, dark and stable, for root vegetables and sealed jars. And the habit is simple. Nothing warm gets sealed. Nothing damp gets stored. Then pick one lever for everything else. Acidity for vegetables. Drying for herbs and snacks. That's the monastery pantry blueprint. It works because it respects physics, not because it's ancient. And if you want one final monastery upgrade that keeps this system alive, do a 5-minute pantry reset once a week. Pull one old item forward. Check one lid for damp smell. Move one bag into the use next spot. Most waste disappears when food stops becoming invisible. Ancient monks didn't have refrigerators. They had rules. And rules, when they're practical, are more powerful than plastic.